This might shock you to learn, but we don't watch The Project much because we're not 50-year-old mums that work in HR. We're close. I've got a vagina at the back of my head. I just don't have kids. Anyway, we flicked it on to see what they're pumping into your mum's mind, and Jesus, I know exactly how Jim Carrey in Batman Forever felt. If you just replace green gamma rays with Peter Hellier showing you videos of, take a look at this swan down in St Kilda that looks a little lost. Mate, you're supposed to be travelling north. Swannies matches are that way. Every time someone writes to me, you are a shill, you don't criticise Labour, I always respond with, okay, why should I be criticising them? And you know why I ask? Because the response is horrifying, and I'm pretty much a pale loser with no friends at heart. I'm a fan of the horror genre. What can I say? I enjoy the adrenaline rush. And I ask them every time, what are the issues that I'm keeping from my audience? They are always, without exception, one of a dozen talking points that the press routinely shit out, and that person is just regurgitating. In fact, to give you a depiction of what happens, the press is the fat guy, there's Steve-O. I am so sick to death of the press saying, social media is a bubble. You're saying that on Twitter, dude. Shut the fuck up. I can't. I'll tell you what's happening there. They're just pissed off they don't have the only bubble in town anymore. You watch the news from Sky to SBS, and the best news source in the country, Morning Show, starring whoever the fuck that chick that sells coffee machines is. It's the same lies delivered to different audiences. In fact, the Project's basically admitting it with their slogan, news delivered differently. To show you, let's look at the world's most genuine, fair dinkum mates. You can tell they'd be hanging out if they weren't paid to. Interviewing Albo. Nice. If there's one person on earth that should be talking to Australia's leaders, it's Tommy Little.
Albo, we've got a problem though. We've already heard that Bill Shorten is campaigning against you behind closed doors. Is he your Tony Abbott?
See, theme number one, leadership turmoil. The Liberals had 3 Prime Ministers and the most ministerial resignations of any government in Australian history. Press? Wow, look at that foundation. Sturdier than the apartments the coalition approved. Meanwhile, during that entire 6-year battle royale, Labor had drumroll. G'day. Same team! The entire fucking time! Still, the press, 6 years later, what's the difference between this squeaky table and Labor? Answer, nothing, because they're both unstable. Brace yourselves though, the criticisms only get stronger. If that was horse tranquilizer, this is tranquilizer designed specifically to take down Matt Preston. Get ready to shift your vote as the Project conjured this scary ventriloquist puppet to life so that they may share with you the wisdom from beyond this realm, which is
Anthony Albanese. Look, he's a mate of mine. I like him very much, but he's just too left-wing to be the Prime Minister of Australia.
This man has a podcast. Hours and hours of this intellectual titan dropping red pills like Gladys Berejiklian has a tough job, lay off. Bit too hard to swallow? If not, come on down to the chemist warehouse of red pills. Pine time. Dude, you don't have to make yourself look even smaller than you are. Too left-wing. Same question as always, what the f*** does that mean? Maybe if we look at Albo's beliefs, it'll give us a clearer picture as what too left-wing means. What is it? Is it banning private property? Gulags? Anthony Albanese believes strongly in the need for the government to invest in infrastructure and transport. Communist scum. You know Ali from the pod? Well, if you don't, he's basically one of those backbenchers you see on the UN listening to East Pakistan is in a precarious position. Once he told his rich mate in Pakistan that he wanted to get into bureaucracy there, and his friend said, dude, I'll help you get into infrastructure. I know some guys that once you're in there, there'll be a suitcase of cash in your office every month. You don't need to worry where it came from, but just so you know, it's from me. Okay? Take it and go. And he said, no, dude. I don't want to get into the bureaucracy to take bribes. I want to go in to help. I want to go into foreign affairs. What? Why the f*** would you want to waste your life like that? get out of my mansion. Here, have a pound of hash for your troubles and then go home, okay? Take it and go. You know why? Because if there was ever a portfolio to be dodgy in, it's infrastructure. Yet, and this is incredible, look at Albo's record as infrastructure minister. Go on, I dare you. Go pour through it right now instead of planning what you plan on doing after this, which is Googling world's largest catfish. Look, I'll save you the time. There it is. Yeah, it's fucking massive. Yeah, it looks exactly the same as General Sherman. Yeah, it's hilarious to call large fish the General. So what? The point is, how many infrastructure projects that Albo approved have question marks over them? The answer is none. Compare that to the Liberals, where they found a way to turn the fucking sports ministry into a giant barrel of pork, let alone the ministry where you're dealing with construction companies all day. Dodgy stuff. Half of these businesses are called Yilmaz Constructions. Still no question marks. The press even thought, oh, they've got nothing. Okay, we'll just invent Udgate then. That's what Chris Pine means by too left-wing. That Albo says the exact same shit the Nationals do, but with one very big left-wing difference. You ready for it? He actually delivers on those promises, just like Stalin. He's too left-wing because he builds roads at cost, instead of giving out contracts to his mates at quadruple the price and then doesn't fucking build them. What else could Chris Pine mean by too left-wing? That once Albo quits politics, he won't become a lobbyist for international arms dealers and push for multi-billion-dollar government contracts to buy not just killing machines, outdated killing machines like Chris Pine did. Isn't it horrifying that this, the mainstream press used to be the only channel of communication all throughout human history, where this Dogs of War Chucky puppet would just flop onto your screen and say, "Yeah, left wing." Well, that settles that. I don't see how Albo could possibly be PM because of this abstract word. Coming up next, didn't think women could be beauty vloggers? Think again. And remember, think about how much of a con this all is. This was on the supposed quote-unquote left-wing news program, where they also ask Albo,
How do you stand up for jobs and the environment if those jobs that we're talking about happen to be in the coal industry?
Unbelievable. This is the same knob who's always whining, the government isn't doing enough about climate change. Okay, let's change the government. No, what's that Sky News talking point? Coal miner jobs, yeah. F*** you, Albo. I'm telling you, some press outlets will whine that Britney Spears' dad shouldn't be running her finances, and others will say, no, we don't have all the facts. And we don't! But that's as far as media diversity goes. When it comes to power, when it comes to what really matters, which is who runs the country, they're all carrying the same basic message, which is keep this man out. Why else would Waleed, who according to Sky is a woke climate warrior, be repeating the classic Sky News mantra of, what about coal miner jobs? Do you think Waleed Aly genuinely cares about Aussie jobs? I'm not sure Waleed Aly genuinely cares about anything other than getting cutty pictures taken of himself for magazines you only see at hair salons. You know why I think that? Because there are other sectors of the economy other than being a host on the project and working in a hole. Well, most of us do work in shit arcade malls, so that's a bit of a technicality. But why is it that according to the press, the jobs in this one unfathomably destructive niche industry matter more than the planet, while every other job in the country worth less than finding out if the monkeys are still alive? Not even worth a mention. Why does the press never ask about the million Aussie jobs destroyed needlessly during COVID that didn't have to be, not my opinion, fact? Compare the employment stats of Labor under the GFC to the Liberals' employment figures under COVID, like Alan Austin from Independent Australia did? Or just watch our video Scoved, as I know you're so lazy that you'd rather watch a 40-minute video than read a 2-minute article. Because there's your answer as to how Albo can be both pro-jobs and have an actual climate policy, Waleed. Less people are employed in coal mining than people who watch The Doghouse. So why aren't you asking, Albo, what's your opinion on shows that clearly have a $0 budget so they film everyday instances like pound workers throwing stray dogs at people who live in council flats as they proclaim, he's a beautiful puppy, he is, isn't he? He's just beautiful. Now watch this interview at the age of COVID, where Albo, as always, has an idea so it can be trotted around in the press as heathenism until it becomes official Liberal policy 6 months later, far too late to be effective, where the press will then ask Scott Morrison, how'd you think of it? It's the same way I think about anything, by looking into the sparkling eyes of my daughters and thinking about the future of this great country, and then realising footy's on in half an hour. It, we'll just put up Labor's policy. This time, Labor wanted to offer people $300 to get vaccinated. Here's what the project asks.
Why do we need to pay people when the recent figures put vaccine hesitancy at just 11%, I think it was?
Well, because in the group of people who are most susceptible to COVID, which is the sick, feeble and Peter Dutton, in that group, vaccine hesitancy is well over a third. And what your question missed is that in that survey, a fifth were also saying, yeah, I'm not scared of the vaccine. I just don't want Bill Gates in my bloodstream.
We know incentives have been used overseas during the pandemic, but is there any actual evidence that they work?
Jesus, I hate that gotcha question media types, Paul. What's your sources? It's like when you used to argue with your brother. You're always jobbing on me to Mum, Simon. When? What do you mean when? What, in the middle of a conversation you're supposed to bring out a diary with recorded evidence, otherwise, oh, you've got no proof. Case dismissed. Can't wait to bitch about you to Mum.
Peter Collignon has tweeted that this was a bad idea. He made that point earlier today. There's that journal of the American Medical Association, which the Prime Minister referred to today in Parliament, that said that offering these incentives actually has a perverse consequence. And just recently, just now, Tom Van Leyer from the University of Sydney, who's a behavioural expert, made this point. The basic idea is if you start paying people to get vaccinated, it actually sends a signal that there must be a reason they're paying and that this is somehow risky behaviour and they might want to back out of that completely.
The studies exist. Of course they exist. This research from UCLA, which says that a third of the population would be incentivised to get vaccinated from a cash payment. Serbia was one of the first to offer a cash payment, and while people weren't sure at the time, yes, it led to more vaccines. But of course, Waleed, who had time to prepare and grab a bunch of studies, it's the journalistic equivalent of mugging someone. Oh yes, I've got a knife. You don't when you were walking to the shops. What a dumbass. The overall point of this cash incentive isn't even to increase jabs, though it will. It's to stimulate the economy. The reason Kevin Rudd's stimulus was so much more effective than the Liberals is because Kevin Rudd gave that money to the people. Scott Morrison, as always, gave it to his mates. As a result of that money being directly injected into the economy instead of what the Liberals did, which was make you fill out a bunch of bullshit forms like you were filing for an application to build a dam, Kevin Rudd made us the only developed country on earth to avoid a recession. Scott Morrison gave us the deepest recession in this nation's history. Labor was trying to think of a way to get that stimulus money to go to the people that the Liberals would say yes to. But Albo, here's what you missed out on. If you want Scott Morrison to agree to a cash handout, just announce every time you get a jab, BHP gets $300. You watch. Scott Morrison would be saying, this is a half-cocked measure from Labor, $3,000. It used to be Australian, respect your heritage. But because that money's going to you...
This is a bad idea.
A government that screwed up both COVID and the bushfires should not have a snowball's chance in hell of winning the next election. Scott Morrison should be leaving the country on a helicopter headed for Hawaii like the president of Afghanistan, hurling bags of money out of it so it can get off the ground. And that would be the only time that he would have ever successfully stimulated this nation's economy. Still, wouldn't be surprised if the Liberals got a fourth term because you have the press in their big echo chamber repeating the same points that make all the idiots in the country right. This guy are idiot. He doesn't know Labour and Liberal are two chicken wings of the same goose. Look, they're wearing suits. If they gave a f***, they'd be wearing board shorts, you f***ing c***. And that's why you've got to give us money on Patreon, because we are the only voice in the country countering this massive, and they're gonna hate this, massive fucking echo chamber. Jamie, Google that shit I read in the Washington Post the other day about chimps not being able to wipe their ass. Make sure you get a brush shirt and keychain at friendlyjordies.com. It's a twofer. And how's this for a poll? Like and subscribe if you hope the project gets cancelled and they put Neighbours back in its rightful slot.
Please share and comment below. Comment.